A show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on GTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Ramney Tertola Pier Park, NV Salon, Nail Spa and Barbershop, Tisley Cross Deliciously Smooth Cider, and Digicel, simply more speed, reliability and entertainment.
Tisley Cross Cider. Tisley Cross Cider. Deliciously smooth.
This is The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition. My guest is no stranger to the set, Miss Shaina Smith-Archer. And today we're not going to be talking in our other capacities, but today we're going to be talking with you today as the chairman of the BVI Chamber of Commerce, and the Hotel Association.
Yes.
That is. How are you?
I'm great, Kathy. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. Well, we've been through the process, through a pandemic, and then, as we started to remove from that stage, we keep following to see how things are progressing with the chamber in terms of your association with the business community, small, medium, large scale. We are now out of a pandemic. We are in an endemic stage, which means that things are becoming very normal, or even better in some instances, from that 2-year period that we were under. How is the transformation taking place?
Well, definitely we know that the last 2 years was really rough for all of us. Whether it's families or businesses. And that we are now, going into, I would say now, that next phase, as it were, of recovery. Because, the last 6 months, we had a pretty decent tourism season, and that helped to normalize things in terms of the money flowing into the country. Because, as we know, our economy is such that a lot of the money is imported and it's coming in through tourists. So once visitors started to return, whether it was through yachting, it was through overnight guests, or even our day trippers, that was definitely a good sign for our recovery. So things aren't, back to pre-pandemic levels yet, of course, because we have a lot of other things still fighting. You still have a high price of goods, whether it's because of global prices, disruptions in the supply chain, the increase in the cost of oil. It affects everything and everybody. So
before we get to that level of things, you said the tourism product of the territory has been coming back pretty decent. In my view, it's like really good. Mm-hmm. And I am thinking that probably everyone was shut away for such a long time that there is this rush to find out, is things still good, or I really, really want to exhale, and this is the place I need to go. We have seen, because I've been moving around the territory, we have seen droves. And when you think that there's going to be a lull now that we are now into the hurricane season, it seems to be well above what used to be in past years in terms of tourists coming into the territory.
Yeah, I think for probably the last 5-10 years, we've actually had what we used to think of as a season in terms of, by April, May, things taper off. But, things are starting to become more consistent, I think, through the year, because some persons might decide, prices are higher during the winter time. So therefore, we're going to plan for a summer vacation. And as a result, then you still will see the traffic, maybe not as peak as the winter season would be. But I think we need to definitely target having basically January to December, tourism
Yes.
arrival. So whether again cruise, I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers also increase based on the announcement from the Minister of Communication and Works, based on what came out of Sea Trade. Because now, if we have more arrivals again, those would be like our day trippers coming in. All of that is, contributing towards the economic growth that we desperately need right now.
Okay, and while we get to the market that we really so need, how are businesses now being able to provide that service that is being demanded of them from customers?
I guess the biggest thing right now, Kathy, whether we want to call it this or not, we have a cost of living crisis, and the cost of doing business is linked to the cost of living. So one of the biggest struggles right now is, again, for businesses trying to maintain what would be considered normal prices, but because again of over the last year, prices have been increasing globally. We don't manufacture anything here, so everything that is on a shelf has to come from someplace. And if for places are being affected by 12% inflation, you understand? Those are things now that are starting to show up now here in terms of when we go to the grocery store, we have to close our eyes at checkout because of the sticker shock. So it isn't something where, again, persons are just trying to profit, and I want to stress that, but a lot of it is in reaction to what is happening in the global market that is going to, translate back to here. So I think businesses are doing their best in terms of looking for alternate suppliers to get their best prices for our consumers here. And it's always going to be a work in progress. But one of the things that we're going to touch on today is in terms of what are some of the concessions now that are needed to help bring down the cost of doing business and therefore affect the cost of living.
I want us to jump right into that.
You want to jump right into it?
Right into that.
Okay. So we know that there was the last concession that was just extended talked about the break on the import duties, right? Where anything above 5% was allowed for, is imported at a rate of 5%. The thing with that though is that, it wasn't just for businesses, it was also for consumers. So it is something where it didn't necessarily directly affect prices like we would have hoped to see it. And we have written to the government because they did ask the chamber for input on it in terms of the extension, and we also gave other ideas in terms of some of the things that need to be looked at. And two, I think, of the big ones that hopefully is being considered would be a basket of goods. We need to again look at how do we make it affordable for families right now, especially our most vulnerable.
Basket of goods, explain that.
So persons may have heard about, let's say for example in Barbados, the government negotiated with the private sector for a basket of basic household goods. So bread, rice, cornflakes, feminine products, baby products, those things that are considered your basic grocery items, and agree to a price range for a period of time. So I think in their case they did it for probably about 6 months. So
and that is subsidized? The cost of that is subsidized?
How it's subsidized now is that the government reduced or eliminated the VAT. So Barbados has value-added tax.
Value-added tax.
So again, it will go back to us. Again, it's a negotiation that would have to happen in terms of, if I give you this break on concessions, then what's the exchange in terms of the pricing? And again, businesses would have to say, well, okay, based on all profit margins and the cost to import, because you still have to pay for freight and insurance and all of these things, you still have your overhead costs, and electricity is killing all of us. So
I don't know why you had to go there today.
I had to go there, but it's one of those. So the negotiation around that now comes back. Okay, we can give you, or should say, we can fix, let's say, baby formula, this particular brand at this particular price. And they only did it with like the major supermarkets. So it isn't that we have to go around to every mom and pop shop, because they actually buy from the others.
Yes.
So if we target the larger supermarkets and say this is what's needed, then we know it's going to show up further down in the supply chain. So that's one. And then the other one was electricity. I don't know how it can be done. I know we've seen, again, other jurisdictions in the Caribbean that governments have done subsidies actually to households. I don't know if they did it for businesses in terms of over a certain amount of kilowatts. You know, the government is basically going to pick up the tab. I think though, for me, I'm going to back it up where we need to go back to the supply chain, because if the price of electricity is being driven by the price of oil, then we need to look for fuel from other sources. So we have two main suppliers that bring in oil here. And again, they don't manufacture, they buy from someplace else. So if we're buying from particular sources and, you know, they're not necessarily the best price, then we need to shop around.
How realistic is that?
You're not going to know till you go look. Because again, we're in a place where we're still, I think one of the big lessons learned from the pandemic is our ability to construct a new box, not think outside the box, but to actually build a new box that's going to work for us. Because long term, fossil fuel is not going away. The news last week showed billions of dollars in profit that, you know, the oil companies have made over the last year or two. And I guess in their mind, it makes up for the losses that they had, you know, during the lockdowns for over a year. But it is something though that with inflation, again, eating away at the power of your dollar, it's like what a dollar could buy a year ago, it can't today. And that's essentially what inflation does. It decreases your buying power. So it is important, you know, inflation again is something that is for a time. The challenge you have is you don't know for how long. So, you know, we could do certain things for a period of time, hope it gives a particular result. But the important thing is you have to actively be doing something. We can't just throw up our hands and say, oh, well, you know, this is the fuel cost, and, you know, if it keeps going up.
But you think it's really that, excuse me, or it's a situation where you have to be careful. It's like you could have alluded to associated with institutional strength. Yes, we have two major suppliers that we negotiate with every year, and I think that bid is usually open up to others, but it's just